Well, the federal budget and quite a reaction we've had on air. A lot of pensioners very concerned. Some of them perhaps unjustifiably so because there are some limits on what they are going to be paying. But nonetheless, you know what I reckon encapsulated it for me. There was a lady who's in her 80s. She's very ill. She's going to have to go 10 times to the doctor and pay $7 a time. The government's arguing that the doctors will have the scope to say, well, all right, well, if you can't pay, you can't pay. That's that personal relationship. But her doctor's passed away. She now goes to a local medical centre, sees a different doctor every time. That kind of impersonal medical centre isn't going to be able to say to her, all right, you don't pay, because they don't know who she is. They haven't got a long-term relationship with her. They're the people that are really going to be hit.
Yeah, and last night's budget speech by Joe Hockey has created a lot of angst, and there are a lot of frightened people out there. We heard a lot of frightened voices today on air, and there's a reason for that. That's what happens when you have a scare campaign that has lasted the best part of 4.5 months in this country. It began with a leak about the GP co-payment. The government deliberately put that out there at about $6 back in early January. We had Peter Dutton, the health minister, on the line one day trying to explain it, and he backed away from it. But they decided to go for it. It's a $7 co-payment, they're calling it. For most people, it's not going to be a big ask. But for a lot of people who are struggling each week, scraping by, they don't actually have a cent left over, to go and find $7 or $14 in those first few weeks is going to hit them and hit them hard.
Yeah, that's not to say that we haven't got a problem. We do need to rein in the budget and to fix the problems in the budget. And anyone who is honest and objective about it knows it's not just the last 5 or 6 years with the Rudd and Gillard government, because they introduced a whole range of big spending programs. It's those series of tax cuts that we happily trousered them. We all thought, fantastic, let's take all these tax cuts that Peter Costello offered. And there were little voices in the distance, people like Ross Gittins saying, hang on a minute, this is creating a huge structural problem down the track in the budget once the mining boom goes, and we're reaping that right now. The question is, how do you fix the budget? Well, you can do lots of different ways.
But to go out and say that this pain is being distributed evenly across all sectors of the society, that's a very disingenuous claim to make right now, because it is clearly going to hurt those on low incomes way more than it hurts high incomes. People earning $500,000 a year will quite happily let go $7,000 or $8,000 extra a year in tax. But for those people who are just getting by on the bare minimum, they're going to be really out there on struggle street.
And some of those people who are listening to us today that have heard Joe Hockey on our program, when we put to him, well, why don't you do something about the huge rorts that are applied to superannuation, huge tax breaks that are going to cost tens of billions of dollars? And he said, well, we made commitments we wouldn't touch that. And you could hear people screaming, well, hang on. You said you wouldn't touch Medicare. You said you wouldn't touch health and education spending. You broke those commitments, so why not the commitments to the big end of town and the high income earners?
And what about the questions remaining over why we are increasing our defence spending to up to 2% of GDP? What's the threat? He couldn't answer that properly either.
No, but look, and look, the bottom line is, the overall picture of this is it is going to get our budget into better shape, and we'll all be the better off for it. And people like us who are high income earners, we're going to be better off for it. But it's going to be
You're a high income earner.
It's going to be off the
You're
back.
a high income earner. Yeah. I'm going to see the boss.
Yeah, it's going to be off the back of a lot of people, and very elderly, frail, and vulnerable people are going to be carrying the load disproportionately, and that's not really what I consider to be the Australia that I grew up in.